A few days ago, the United Nations General Assembly called for an immediate ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas. During the session, Dennis Francis, the president of the General Assembly, said, quote, "The right of self-defense does not and cannot lawfully give license to undertake indiscriminate and disproportionate reprisal." The obvious intent of Francis's remarks is that Israel is being indiscriminate and disproportionate. The accusation that Israel's actions are disproportionate is repeated by politicians and the media daily, usually while reporting the number of casualties on each side since the October 7th Hamas attacks. The implication is that legitimate proportionality in warfare is determined by the number of dead on each side of the conflict. So here's the question. Is Israel acting disproportionately? According to international law, the principle of proportionality in war prohibits causing harm to civilians that would be, quote, excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated in the pursuit of a military objective. In other words, whether a response is proportional has nothing to do with how many people the other side killed. It's not about revenge or justice. Proportional response doesn't mean killing the same number of people as your enemy did. It means that the military actions you take are necessary to achieve the military objective and nothing more. Any action beyond the military objective would then be disproportionate. So, for example, if an apartment building is being used as a launching pad for Hamas rockets, or it houses Hamas terrorists, if the military objective of defeating Hamas requires this building be destroyed, the targeting of the building is proportionate, regardless of the other casualties who are inside the building at the time. Civilian casualties caused by such a strike are tragic, but they are not a violation of the laws of warfare. Of course, the military objective must be a just one, and Israel's goal of destroying Hamas, an armed force whose self-proclaimed purpose is the destruction of Israel and the murder of all Jews, certainly fits the bill. Oh, but what about the humanitarian disaster? Why is Israel cutting off electricity and water to Gaza? How does this serve the military objective? I'm glad you asked. You may have heard about the Hamas tunnels in Gaza. Over the past 2 decades, Hamas built a network of 300 miles of tunnels, hundreds of feet below ground. These sophisticated concrete tunnels were built as bunkers and ammunition storehouses. Some of the tunnels lead directly into Israeli towns and were built for the purpose of infiltration and murder of Israeli citizens. An estimated 40,000 Hamas terrorists currently live in these tunnels, which depend on continuous electricity and water. To defeat Hamas, Israel needs these terrorists to come above ground, because entering the tunnels to fight Hamas will put the Israeli forces at a serious tactical disadvantage. And because Hamas is the government of Gaza, all humanitarian aid that enters Gaza first goes to the Hamas fighters in the tunnels before anything is shared with the citizens. Only by cutting off electricity, water, and other supplies to the tunnels can Israel force these terrorists to come up for air. Does this mean the civilian population will suffer as well? Tragically, yes it does. But cutting off electricity and water to Gaza is necessary for Israel to defeat Hamas quickly, which in the long run will save many more lives on both sides, and there's nothing disproportionate about that. Civilian casualties are the great tragedy of war, but just as the bombings of Dresden and Japanese cities were necessary to defeat Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, Israel's war against Hamas means that some civilians will tragically die. And just as the leadership of those regimes was to blame for the suffering of their own people, the same is true of Hamas and the civilians of the Gaza Strip.